Imagine a day when the husband suddenly decides to take off from work just to play video games at home. The question immediately arises: how would the wife feel? Annoyed? Frustrated? Or would she just let him enjoy his day off? The wife, who works from home and cares for their young child, is faced with exactly this situation. Her husband has 15 sick days and 4 weeks of vacation, and he often chooses random days off to just relax and chill. She, on the other hand, has far fewer days off and must constantly juggle her remote work with parenting responsibilities. That morning, as she sat down at the kitchen table with her laptop, ready to dive into her work, her husband casually emerged from the bedroom, grinning. "Hey, I'm taking the day off. Just want to relax a bit." She forced a smile, letting out a quiet sigh inside. Questions immediately began racing through her mind. Relax? While I still have to finish my report and get dinner ready for our kid. How can he just chill while I'm spinning in circles trying to keep everything together? Without missing a beat, he carried a secondary monitor from the basement, setting it up on the dining table. He transformed it into his own little home office, except it wasn't for work at all. The wife couldn't help but feel a mix of amusement and frustration. It wasn't that he wanted to play games or watch shows all day that bothered her, it was that all the household chores, from laundry to meal prep, were still her responsibility, while he got to enjoy a stress-free day. Their child ran out of the living room, spilling half a carton of milk onto the floor, eyes wide and expectant. She bent down to clean it up, thinking, a day off for him does not mean a day off for her. The pile of laundry, the sink full of dishes, the constant background hum of responsibilities, it all still fell on her shoulders. She took a slow sip of her coffee, glancing at her husband, who was now immersed in his game with headphones on, oblivious to the chaos around him. I hope he can at least help with something small, she thought. He turned toward her, giving a relaxed smile. Don't worry. Just pretend I'm at work. And just like that, the silent battle between his day off and her household responsibilities began. A quiet tension neither of them fully anticipated. She had no idea just how long this tug-of-war would last, or how it would slowly test the limits of patience, fairness, and compromise within their home. Every morning, the wife starts her day long before the sun rises. She moves quietly around the house, careful not to wake her child too early. She prepares breakfast, checks that lunch boxes are packed, makes sure the milk is ready, and reminds her little one to put on their uniform. Every action flows seamlessly into the next, a carefully choreographed routine honed by necessity. Even a small delay can throw the whole day off balance, so she works with both speed and precision. Once the child is ready, the husband usually shows up to take over the school drop-off. On most days, he heads straight to work afterward, but on a few days each month, he exercises one of his privileges, taking a spontaneous day off just to relax, unwind, or catch up on video games and streaming videos. She knows these days bring him a moment of calm, a pause from his busy schedule, yet for her, they add another layer of responsibility. After the child leaves the house, she returns to her desk. Her laptop hums to life, notifications flood in, and virtual meetings start one after another. Calls are long, deadlines loom, emails multiply, and pings echo from every corner. Each task demands her attention, focus, and careful juggling. Meanwhile, her husband is free to immerse himself in his own world, headphones on, fingers flying across a game controller, YouTube videos playing in the background, creating a bubble of calm for himself while the household quietly hums around him. Her responsibilities are not limited to work. She keeps one eye on the clock, planning when to start dinner, when to fold laundry, when to clean up toys scattered across the living room floor. Small tasks, when added together, become monumental. She moves through the house like a conductor orchestrating chaos, each movement measured, each action purposeful, all while silently carrying the weight of the day. Occasionally, she pauses to look around. The sink is full of dishes, laundry sits waiting in baskets, and toys are strewn across the floor. The living room, once tidy, now resembles a mini battlefield of everyday life. She takes a deep breath, quietly thinking, "Am I supposed to do all of this by myself?" Yet deep down, she understands that her husband simply wants a day fully to himself, separate from the pressures and routines of daily life. Sometimes, she wonders if there could be a compromise, a way for him to relax and still help just a little around the house. Could he fold a few pieces of laundry or start a simple meal while she finishes her work? The thought lingers in her mind, tugging at her attention, leaving her both fatigued and contemplative. The pressure she feels is not only about work. There is a subtle sense of unfairness that adds weight to her day. While one person is free to unwind, the other bears the combined load of professional and domestic responsibilities. It's a quiet, persistent struggle. The wife must stay productive, keep the household running smoothly, and ensure the child's needs are met. Even the small details feel amplified. The faint whir of the washing machine, the soft clatter of dishes being stacked, the occasional thump of the child's toy hitting the floor. These sounds, usually mundane, now underscore the imbalance between relaxation and responsibility, creating an invisible tension in the house. Every morning repeats this delicate balancing act. It feels like a test of endurance, patience, and precision. Yet she persists. She knows the family depends on her, and she refuses to let the stress of a single day off for her husband disrupt the rhythm of their home. In her quiet moments, she asks herself, is there a way to make this work for both of us? But the answer remains elusive, lingering at the back of her mind like an unsolved puzzle. Through it all, she moves forward, silently carrying both the visible and invisible burdens of the household, determined to maintain harmony even when the scales of fairness feel uneven. Every day becomes a lesson in resilience, patience, and subtle negotiation. A reminder that balancing work, family, and personal space is rarely simple. About once a month, the husband would decide, without warning, to take the day off and stay home playing video games. That morning, as the wife had just settled at her desk, he would drag the dining table out into the living area, set up his secondary monitor, and effectively transform the family's eating space into his personal home office. Though in reality, it wasn't for work at all. He would plug in his headphones, cue up game music or a favorite video, and settle into his day of complete relaxation. The soundscape of mouse clicks, keyboard taps, and background game music blended with the otherwise quiet house, creating an atmosphere that was at once humorous and slightly irritating to the wife. At first, she could manage. He was enjoying his day off. She was focused on her work, and everything seemed, on the surface, balanced. But gradually, the pressure began to mount. Household chores remained entirely her responsibility. Laundry, tidying up, preparing dinner, and keeping the child's things organized. Each time she paused to glance around, she saw the clutter and felt a creeping exhaustion mingled with frustration. Slowly, She came to realize something. Her husband's day off wasn't just a day for him to relax, was a day that added more weight to her already full plate. Watching him lean back in the chair, controller in hand, effortlessly navigating through a game, she thought, if only he could help just a little. Even one small task would make a difference. But he remained cheerful and At one point, he looked over and smiled at her. "Don't worry. Just pretend I'm at work." The simple statement, intended to be reassuring, only intensified her mixed feelings, part irritation. She wondered how she could respect his right to relax while still easing the burden that fell solely on her shoulders. The morning wore on. He played games, sipped coffee, occasionally lifting his gaze to offer a smile, while she continually shifted between professional obligations and domestic duties. The sounds of the death hour of the washing machine, her child calling for attention, the constant clicking and beeping from his monitor, created a chaotic rhythm. Each noise reminded her of the tasks she couldn't ignore. Adding layers to her growing fatigue, she recognized that these spontaneous days off would continue to repeat, a regular feature of their household life. She knew she needed to find a way to balance his leisure with her responsibilities, so that his day off didn't automatically become a day of extra labor for her. It was a quiet but persistent challenge. The sense of unfairness, the physical and mental exhaustion, and the constant mental calculations of what needed to be done, these pressures built up minute by minute. Every click of his controller, every sip of coffee he took, and every uninterrupted hour of relaxation underscored the divide between their experiences. In those moments, she silently pondered solutions. Could there be a compromise that allowed him to enjoy his time without neglecting the household? Could she ask for just a few minutes of help without intruding on his peace? The questions hovered unspoken, a shadow at the edge of her day, reminding her that maintaining fairness in a household is rarely simple. By midday, the rhythm of the house had settled into a peculiar pattern. His laughter or murmurs from the game, the occasional call of the child, the soft hum of appliances in the background, and her constant multitasking, checking work emails, switching laundry loads, and preparing for dinner. The day was long, yet uneventful, except for the underlying tension that silently threaded through every interaction. She understood that this was more than just a conflict over chores. It was a subtle, ongoing struggle between the right to personal downtime and the responsibility to the family. A day meant for relaxation for one had become, in practice, a day of amplified pressure for the other. And so she carried on, quietly navigating her responsibilities while observing him at ease. Every passing hour reminded her of the delicate balance between fairness, compromise, and the silent negotiations required to make their household function. It was a persistent, invisible challenge, one that left her exhausted yet determined. As she sought a way to coexist with her husband's spontaneous days off without letting the sense of unfairness overwhelm her. The wife was painfully aware that her own time off was extremely limited. Every day, she had to navigate a delicate balancing act, completing work assignments, responding to emails and video calls, caring for their child, tidying up the house, and preparing dinner. Each minute of her day felt dictated by obligations, leaving almost no room to pause, breathe, or recharge. In stark contrast, her husband had an abundance of free time, with 15 sick days and 4 weeks of vacation at his disposal. He could choose to spend an entire day doing nothing but playing video games or fully relaxing at home. She didn't begrudge him the right to unwind. Everyone needed rest, but the imbalance was hard to ignore. while he lounged in comfort. She carried the weight of a day packed with responsibilities. What frustrated her most was the sheer disparity between their experiences. Just 5 minutes to start a load of laundry or pick up scattered toys could save her an hour of stress later. Yet, she often found herself multitasking frantically, typing reports, answering work calls, checking emails, while simultaneously chopping vegetables, stirring a pot on the stove, and mentally tracking her child's schedule. Small tasks, accumulated, became a mountain of pressure pressing down on her. She watched him sitting comfortably in the chair, sipping coffee, pressing buttons on his controller, completely absorbed in his game. His eyes were calm, unburdened, and relaxed. A wave of mixed emotions swept over her amusement at the scene, irritation at the imbalance, and a quiet longing. Just a little help. Even one small task, she thought, would make such a difference. Each day felt like an endurance test. She had to carefully balance professional responsibilities, household chores, and childcare, all while her husband enjoyed his spontaneous day off without interference. Even when he was physically present at home, she realized she could never truly rest. The subtle tension of unfairness threaded through her thoughts and body. The gentle hum of the washing machine, the occasional clatter of dishes in the sink, the soft thud of her child's toy on the floor. These ordinary sounds now seemed like reminders of the invisible gap between her responsibilities and his leisure. Her shoulders tensed, her back ached slightly, and a faint but persistent tightness pressed on her chest. She felt simultaneously exhausted, amused, and irritated, a cocktail of emotions that grew heavier with every passing hour. She paused, sometimes to glance out the window, sunlight spilling into the kitchen. In those moments, she imagined what it would feel like to have just 1 hour for herself, a moment to sip her coffee in peace, or simply breathe without thinking about the next chore. But that hour rarely came. Even when her husband took a day off, she remained in constant motion, attending to tasks that would not complete themselves. Her mind often wandered to compromises. Could he fold a few pieces of laundry, or chop vegetables while she finished her work? Could she ask for just a few minutes of help without intruding on his relaxation? These thoughts hovered at the edge of her consciousness, unspoken yet persistent, reminding her that balancing fairness in a household is never simple. Each passing day was a rhythm of endurance. She moved through the house with careful, measured steps, folding clothes, arranging toys, checking dinner, keeping the space functional and orderly. Every action was threaded with care. Yet every completed task reminded her of how much she alone carried. Still, she pressed on. She understood the family relied on her, and despite the fatigue, frustration, and occasional pangs of unfairness, she refused to let one day off for her husband disrupt the household. Yet, deep in her mind, the question lingered: is there a way to make this fair? A way for him to relax while still contributing a little. And so she carried on, silently navigating the tension between work, family, and fairness. Each minute ticked by, a reminder of her responsibilities, the unspoken imbalance, and the quiet endurance required to maintain harmony. It was exhausting, yes, but also a testament to her resilience. Even in the face of unequal burdens, she moved forward, striving to keep the household running smoothly, her child cared for, and her husband's day off uninterrupted, all while silently hoping for just a small measure of shared responsibility. The wife felt a persistent, simmering frustration every time she thought about the days her husband decided to stay home. While he lounged comfortably, playing video games, watching shows, or simply sprawling on the sofa, she was left to juggle everything else, completing work tasks, preparing dinner, tidying the house, and caring for their child. Each task seemed small on its own, but combined, they formed an immense pressure that weighed heavily on her. The peak of tension usually came between 4 and 5 p.m., the most chaotic hour of the day. She was wrapping up online meetings, answering a flood of emails, and simultaneously preparing dinner. One hand stirred a pot on the stove, while the other checked her laptop. Her ears picked up the steady rhythm of her husband's game music and the constant clicking of his mouse. The contrast was sharp. One person relaxed, the other under relentless stress as she moved through the kitchen. She couldn't help but notice the lingering chores, laundry waiting to be folded, the floor littered with toys, dishes stacking in the sink. Every glance at her husband, leaning back comfortably at the dining table, hands flying over the keyboard, brought a mixture of amusement and irritation. His calm demeanor, in stark contrast to her whirlwind, intensified her sense of unfairness. She thought to herself, just a little help. Is that too much? One ready-made dish, or a single load of laundry. It would make the day so much easier. But she knew that speaking up could ruin his carefully curated day off. So she remained silent, shouldering the responsibilities herself. Her child ran into the kitchen, clutching a toy, eyes wide. "Mum, I'm hungry," they said. She exhaled, feeling a mixture of exasperation, love, and quiet resentment. If only he could pitch in just a little, she thought. The whole day would feel lighter. But the truth was clear. Her husband's day off did not translate into a day of rest for her. Looking around the house, the visual evidence of her workload was everywhere. Dishes unwashed, laundry overflowing from baskets, toys scattered across the living room, and her desk buried under papers and work documents. The house seemed to whisper a silent, relentless reminder of the imbalance. She felt as though she was fighting alone against the demands of the day. Every sound heightened the tension, the hum of the washing machine, the child's repeated calls for attention, the game music and mouse clicks from her husband's station. Each noise reminded her of the invisible wall between them. One person free to relax, one person carrying the weight of it all. In the back of her mind, a question kept returning. How can I balance this? How can he enjoy his day off and still contribute a little? The thought lingered like a shadow, amplifying the quiet pressure of the afternoon. For her, these days were never just ordinary. They became a silent, ongoing challenge. The clash between her husband's right to leisure and the necessity of shared responsibility. She felt tense, exhausted, and painfully aware that patience was her only tool. She knew that losing her temper or expressing frustration too sharply would not only strain their relationship, but also drain her further. So she continued, stirring, typing, folding, and responding, all while silently measuring the gap between fairness and relaxation. The days stretched long, each minute a reminder that even as she kept everything running, the question of balance remained unresolved. And in that quiet tension, she found herself navigating the difficult line between tolerance, endurance, and hope that someday, even in small ways, the load could be shared. Asterisk as the clock neared 4 p.m. The pressure on the wife steadily increased. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, stealing glances at the dining table where her husband was immersed in his game. Occasionally, he took a sip of coffee, eyes relaxed, completely free from the weight of the afternoon. Taking a deep breath, she decided it was time to speak up. "Hey, could you help a little? Just half an hour, maybe an hour, to help with dinner or start a load of laundry." "I'm not asking for much," she said, trying to keep her tone gentle but firm. He looked up, removing his headphones, and shrugged. "I thought I was still going to work," he said. "I just wanted a day to chill. Honestly, I really need it." She inhaled deeply, trying to suppress the irritation building in her chest. "You know, I need rest too," she said carefully, "but I have so much less free time than you do. Even a little help. Just enough so I'm not handling everything alone." He sighed, leaning back in the chair, a slightly awkward expression on his face. "Look," he admitted, "for me, a day off is to step away from all pressure. If I start doing chores, it's not really a day off anymore." The wife studied him for a moment, torn between understanding and frustration. She realized that the conflict wasn't only about household tasks, it was about balancing personal downtime with family responsibilities. One person wanted a fully uninterrupted day to relax. The other needed support to survive the busiest hour of the day. "Look," she said softly, "I don't want to ruin your day off, but I need to survive this peak hour too. Just a little. Really, that's all I'm asking. Is that too much?" He stayed silent for a moment, watching her move around the kitchen as she prepared the vegetables. Then he muttered, almost to himself, "Yeah, I get it. I don't want to feel pressured on my day off." They stood in quiet for several minutes. The only sounds, the chopping of vegetables, the faint hum of the dishwasher, and the distant click-clack of his keyboard from the game. She reflected inwardly this was one of those painfully delicate moments. Should she assert her needs, or respect his right to fully relax? Their child ran in, holding a toy, calling out, "Mum, I'm hungry." The interruption brought a small, humanizing touch to the tension, both irritating and heartwarming. The wife decided to partially step back, letting him enjoy his game, yet her mind remained preoccupied. She knew that without finding a better balance, days like this would continue to quietly escalate into sources of tension. Meanwhile, he continued playing, but occasionally glanced toward her, as if recognizing, at least in part, the weight she carried. The silent conflict lingered in the air, but it was bigger than chores or time off. It was a story about empathy, compromise, and the delicate art of negotiation between two people sharing a life together. A day that seemed ordinary on the surface became a subtle, ongoing challenge, an exercise in patience, understanding, and quiet collaboration, where both were learning, slowly, how to coexist without resentment. The husband leaned back in his chair, fingers gliding over the keyboard, eyes fixed on the screen, but inside, a subtle internal struggle was quietly unfolding. For him, a day off wasn't just free time, it was a pause, a rare pocket of silence between the relentless pressures of work, endless deadlines, and back-to-back meetings. It was an opportunity to recharge for the week ahead. He wanted to relax, play games, read a book, or simply stretch out on the sofa without being interrupted or held accountable for anything. Yet, all around him, life carried on. The hum of his game music from his headphones mixed with the quiet whir of the washing machine, the sound of their child running through the living room, and the steady rhythm of his wife moving about the kitchen preparing dinner. He felt both relaxed and, curiously, a touch of pressure. A thought ran through his mind. "I'm enjoying my day off, but she's swamped. Should I step in a little?" Across the kitchen, his wife's eyes occasionally flicked toward him, watching the gaming station at the dining table. Her brow furrowed slightly as she chopped vegetables, the cluttered kitchen silently reflecting her workload. She thought, just a little help. 30 minutes, an hour, that's all it would take. Why won't he? She felt a mix of frustration and compassion, knowing he too needed time to rest. Meanwhile, in his own head, the husband wrestled with conflicting impulses. If I help, the day loses its meaning. But if I don't, she'll be exhausted. I want to rest, but I also don't want her to struggle too much. The tension made him exhale softly. Even while playing, he could not fully immerse himself in the game. A part of him remained tethered to the reality of his wife's tireless efforts around him. He paused the game momentarily, sipped his coffee, and scanned the room. Dishes piled up, laundry baskets overflowing, toys scattered across the living room. The pressure of household tasks intertwined with the desire to rest, creating a subtle, unnamed discomfort. He realized that a day off was not simply an escape. It required a delicate balance between personal needs and family responsibilities. In these moments, he found himself at a crossroads. Should he continue to enjoy an uninterrupted day off, or should he get up and help with chores to ease his wife's load? Half of him wanted to remain detached, half wanted to contribute. The thought looped endlessly in his mind, leaving him torn between leisure and conscience. His wife, noticing the faintly puzzled expression in his eyes, wondered silently, does the right to a day off come with the responsibility to share household duties? She felt conflicted herself, wanting to respect his need for rest while also seeking support to manage the household. Both were silent, yet their minds churned with complex thoughts, one defending personal entitlement, the other seeking understanding and shared responsibility. The quiet stretched on, punctuated only by ambient sounds, the hum of the game, the child calling for attention, the chopping of vegetables. These everyday noises highlighted the disparity between their worlds, one free to indulge, the other bearing the brunt of daily responsibilities. The conflict was not verbal but felt deeply in invisible tug-of-war between fairness, rest, and empathy. The husband took another sip of coffee, observing his wife preparing dinner, and sighed. Slowly, a thought began to flicker in his mind. Maybe I can help a little. Gently, just enough to lighten her load, without losing the essence of my day off. This was the silent tension they both experienced, where an ordinary day transformed into a quiet struggle between individual needs and family obligations, between relaxation and participation, between comfort and fairness. A single day off, simple on the surface, had become a nuanced exercise in empathy, compromise, and the subtle negotiations required in sharing a life together. It was just another typical sick day for the husband, but for the wife, it felt like a phenomenon she privately dubbed the sick day office takeover. From early in the morning, he had dragged the dining table out, set up the secondary monitor from the basement, and transformed the kitchen, once the heart of the family's meals, into his perfect home office. Headphones in place, game running, he leaned back in the chair, fingers dancing over the keyboard, eyes glued to the screen. The wife passed by several times, stealing glances at him. His focus was intense, expression serious, every bit as committed as if he were working from home full-time. The only difference, instead of emails and reports, he was completely immersed in the digital world of his game. Mouse clicks and key presses, echoing in a rhythmic pattern alongside the background music. She exhaled, a mix of amusement and irritation bubbling up inside her. The scene repeated itself every time he took one of his spontaneous days off. The house remained a mess, dishes piled up in the sink, laundry waiting in baskets, toys scattered across the living room, but he remained entirely absorbed in his personal home office. The wife tried to keep her composure as she went about, preparing breakfast and then lunch. Each time she walked past, she saw him comfortably leaning back, holding his coffee, eyes fixed on the screen, a familiar, yet oddly absurd, sight. Occasionally, he glanced at her and gave a small, reassuring smile, as if to say, "Don't worry, just pretend I'm working." Yet the sense of injustice started to rise within her. While she carried the weight of preparing everything for the family and managing work, he was free to enjoy his day without interruption. She silently thought, if only he could help a little. Even half an hour of laundry or prepping a meal would make such a difference. The sounds around them amplified the contrast. The relentless click of the mouse, the faint gaming music through his headphones, their child's footsteps and giggles, the low hum of the washing machine, all forming a peculiar symphony that underscored the gap between personal freedom and household responsibility. The entire day passed, and he remained completely comfortable in his home office. Meanwhile, she kept herself busy, juggling tasks, cleaning, and meal prepping, acutely aware of the imbalance. A day that seemed ordinary on the surface became a silent battlefield, subtle struggle over leisure, responsibility, and sharing in her mind. The question lingered: is there a way for him to enjoy his day off while also helping the family just a little? It wasn't an easy question to answer. His day off represented total freedom, but she couldn't sustain herself alone forever. These ordinary moments, invisible to outsiders, were intensely vivid for the wife, yet tinged with humor, etched deeply into her memory. They served as a perfect illustration of the conflict between personal relaxation and family obligation, a living snapshot of how a normal day could quietly become a struggle for balance, empathy, and cooperation. Asterisk, while the husband comfortably enjoyed his day off, all household responsibilities remained firmly on the wife's shoulders. Laundry, cooking, tidying up, every task, from morning to evening, fell to her. Each time she started the washing machine, folded clothes, or prepped dinner, a subtle tension crept over her, as if she were constantly racing against time and responsibility. Just 5 minutes of laundry or a quick meal prep could take care of a small portion of the workload, but those small tasks kept repeating throughout the day. She had to hop from one chore to the next, picking up toys scattered across the living room, preparing lunch, washing dishes, folding clothes, wiping counters, sweeping the floor. Meanwhile, he leaned back in his chair, fingers flying over the keyboard, completely immersed in his game, eyes relaxed and carefree, seemingly oblivious to the mounting pressure on her. The surrounding sounds accentuated the sense of injustice: the hum of the washing machine, the rhythmic clicking of the mouse, the child's footsteps and laughter, the chopping and sizzling from the kitchen. Together, these noises formed a strange, dissonant symphonia, stark reflection of the disparity between two worlds: one person fully resting, one person endlessly laboring. She silently thought, if only he could help for just half an hour, everything would feel so much lighter. But she knew that reminding him might ruin his day off, which added to her own tension. So she carried on, eyes darting toward him every now and then, feelings of frustration and helplessness mingling inside her. Throughout the day, the small but essential tasks piled up: dishes in the sink, clothes waiting in baskets, toys and children's items scattered everywhere. She realized that his day off directly translated into her doing more, and this imbalance became a silent, persistent pressure stretching from morning until evening. This scenario illustrated perfectly the conflict between personal leisure and family responsibility. A day that seemed ordinary on the surface became a subtle, nuanced challenge. The wife had to balance work, household duties, and childcare, all while managing her own emotions. Each click from the game, each giggle from the child, each hum of the washing machine was a reminder of the gap between them, an ongoing test of patience, empathy, and endurance. By the time evening approached, the weight of the day's accumulated chores was tangible. The wife felt simultaneously exhausted and vigilant, knowing that even small moments of rest were limited. Yet, despite the frustration, she continued with quiet resilience, aware that maintaining the household required her full attention and that even on a seemingly normal day, her endurance was being tested in ways outsiders would never see. Over the past few months, the husband's sudden days off had gradually become a source of quiet tension. The wife had reminded him countless times, gently, just help a little, and everything would feel so much lighter. Yet, he often responded nonchalantly, "Don't bother me on my day off. Let me just enjoy a chill day." At first, these words seemed harmless, but repeated over and over, they began to accumulate into a small mountain of frustration in the wife's mind. She wanted fairness. He should contribute a portion of the household chores, yet she didn't want to ruin his day off. This conflict created a subtle, persistent stress she could hardly express aloud. During peak hours, around 4 to 5 p.m., the pressure intensified. She would just finish work, then move on to preparing dinner, tidying the living room, doing laundry, and organizing her child's things. Every time she walked past the dining table, where he lounged comfortably playing games, she felt both frustrated and powerless. The accumulation of these small conflicts created a suffocating, silent weight. She silently wondered, should I keep reminding him, or just let him enjoy his day off while I handle everything? This question lingered in her mind, creating a persistent inner struggle between her desire for fairness and the need to respect someone else's rest. Watching him recline in the chair, fingers flying over the keyboard, eyes glued to the screen, she felt a mix of amusement and stress. The sounds around her, the music from his game, the washing machine humming, her child running around blended together like a rhythm, constantly reminding her that the household responsibilities were still unevenly shared, that these conflicts didn't explode into arguments. Instead, they silently built up. They appeared in fleeting glances, quiet sighs, and tense moments when she simultaneously folded clothes and prepared dinner. The accumulation of these small disputes created a long-lasting tension in family life. Even though both loved and respected each other, the wife understood that if she didn't find a way to balance things, her husband's relaxing days would always turn into a source of silent pressure for her. It was a subtle challenge, testing patience, communication, and mutual understanding. Every small unresolved tension, every repeated day of uneven responsibility, quietly shaped the dynamics of their household, revealing the delicate balance between personal leisure and shared duty. The wife silently asked herself, "Am I being the bad one here?" She reflected on the past few months and realized that she wasn't doing anything unreasonable or controlling. She was carrying an immense load, taking care of a young child, managing remote work, meeting tight deadlines, all while cleaning, doing laundry, and preparing meals. Her personal time was limited, almost non-existent, leaving barely any space to breathe or relax. Meanwhile, her husband had 15 sick days and 4 weeks of vacation days. He sometimes spent entirely on gaming or just chilling at home. Her wish was simple: a little help around the house. Even just half an hour to fold laundry or prep a meal would ease the pressure on her shoulders. She wasn't asking him to do it all, nor was she trying to micromanage. She simply wanted a small balance, so she wouldn't have to carry everything alone inside. There was no desire to force or punish him. She understood that a day off was a personal right, but she also felt that this right didn't mean ignoring family responsibilities. Her thought process wasn't about criticism, was about fairness and shared effort. She reminded herself, "I'm not the bad one. I'm just trying to survive peak hours and hoping for a little support, so both of us can enjoy a more balanced life." When she analyzed the situation carefully, her requests seemed entirely reasonable. One small task during his day off wouldn't ruin his relaxation. It would reduce her stress and create a small but meaningful balance in the household. She wasn't demanding or imposing. She simply sought gentle cooperation. From this perspective, she could see clearly that wanting her husband to share part of the responsibilities didn't make her an a-hole. On the contrary, she was advocating for fairness, protecting her mental health, and maintaining harmony in the family. This reflection gave her clarity. She wasn't being controlling or unfair. She was simply asking for a tiny bit of partnership, the kind that allows both partners to enjoy life without one person silently shouldering the entire burden. Asterisk. The wife began trying to see things from her husband's perspective. In her eyes, he had several legitimate rights that she could not ignore. First and foremost, he earned his vacation days and sick leave fairly, using them according to company policy. This was a right that every employee is entitled to, and choosing to use a day off to fully relax was entirely legal and reasonable. A day off, whether scheduled in advance or taken spontaneously, as a personal right. He was not obligated to complete household chores during that time. When he chose to play video games or simply enjoy his free time, he was protecting his mental health and recharging for the week ahead. The wife realized that not everyone wants to combine relaxation with household duties. Some people need a clear boundary, a total separation from responsibilities, to truly unwind. Watching him, she noticed the ease in his posture, the simple joy in his expressions as he immersed himself in his day off. He wasn't being careless or trying to make her life harder. He simply wanted to enjoy his entitled break. This wasn't selfishness. It was a method he used to maintain personal balance. She also acknowledged that even if he didn't help with chores during his day off, he contributed to family responsibilities in other ways, taking the child to school, using his vacation and sick days responsibly, and occasionally helping with tasks when approached gently. These actions showed that he wasn't being in a hole. He just had his own way of resting and enjoying his personal time. The wife reminded herself, "I need to be understanding. He isn't a bad person. He just needs rest. The only reason I feel frustrated is that his days off coincide with my peak hours." Seeing it this way, she realized that the conflict wasn't about right or wrong. It was about differing needs for rest and household participation. From this perspective, both partners had valid reasons, and neither was truly at fault. The key was understanding, respecting each other's needs, and finding a way to balance them. Rather than focusing solely on feelings of unfairness or momentary irritation, after considering both perspectives, the wife realized that this situation wasn't as simple as who's right or wrong. It was a delicate balance, where her husband's personal right to rest collided with the family responsibilities she carried on her own. She understood that she wasn't being unreasonable for wanting little help with household tasks, given the weight of responsibilities on her shoulders. At the same time, she recognized that her husband wasn't an a-hole either. He had earned vacation and sick days. He had the right to relax, and he simply wanted to enjoy his day off in his own way. Both sides had valid reasons, but the clash arose from differing needs and ways of balancing life. This story highlighted an important lesson. Family life requires cooperation, but each person also deserves respect for their personal time and individual needs. Conflicts aren't always about someone being wrong. They often stem from differences in perspective and priorities. The wife found herself asking, is there a way for both of us to feel fair? Can he enjoy his day off while still sharing some of the responsibilities? It was not an easy question, and the answer would likely differ in every household. Finally, she turned the question outward, inviting reflection from others. If you were the wife, what would you do in this situation? Would you remind him and insist on help, or let him enjoy his day off? And if you were the husband, how would you balance your right to rest with your family responsibilities? This was not just a story about a spontaneous day. It was a lesson in communication, empathy, and finding balance in marriage. Listeners were encouraged to think, in family life, there isn't always an absolute right or wrong, but there are ways to harmonize, to ensure that both people feel respected and supported. As the story concluded, the question lingered: how can couples protect personal boundaries while sharing responsibilities, so that both feel valued, understood, and happy?